I absolutely adored every second of Treehouse of Horror 28. This is the fourth episode of the 29th season of The Simpsons, directed by Timothy Bailey, and the last few Treehouse of Horrors have been not that great. So I was a little worried when I started watching this that this was a trend I'd have to get used to, but I'm overjoyed. As always, I will go through the three segments. I'll also mention the intro, so there will absolutely be spoilers for things that happen from this point on. And the opening was fabulous. The characters are candy at Halloween, and it's from their perspective, and I rather enjoyed it. It was very well animated, and honestly, I would have enjoyed a full segment based on that. It worked very well. Really strong opening. Then we have The Exor-Sis, which is, of course, a parody of The Exorcist. Now, it does help that I did recently, as in last week, the week before, watch the first three Exorcist films, so my head is very much in the zone of The Exorcist. But that aside, I still thought it was really good. Maggie is in the position of Reagan, and she becomes possessed, and I really liked it. It was very well animated, and having Maggie floating, I thought, was a really good way to help her move around the house, and having her tied down, I think visually worked very well. Kind of the bright colour of the string. It was just really engaging, really entertaining, really thoroughly enjoyed it. The middle one, I adore. This is Coralisa, and it's a parody of one of the most amazing films ever, Coraline, based, of course, on the book by Neil Gaiman. And Neil Gaiman actually voices the cat. He actually provides the voice to Snowball, which I thought was wonderful, and obviously having Snowball in the role of the cat I thought was just perfect. Lisa goes through and finds her other mother and her other father and other brother, and it's wonderful. I had, when I went into it, wondered how much of it would be in Coraline animation style. To be honest, the animation style is not a lot like the film. I was expecting that because I knew before I watched it that it was going to parody Coraline. It's not actually like the style from Henry Selick's film, but they are still very recognisably characters from Coraline. And I really enjoyed it. I liked that it went back and forth between the classic Simpsons style and then the Coraline style in this episode. And I had a lot of fun with it, and I absolutely adored it. If you're a fan of Coraline, I think you'll really love it. And the last one is called Homer, which I can only hear in the Dan-on voice, which I assume is the point. I think that's what they're getting at there. And the Simpsons family are all away, apart from Homer. And with no food left in the house, Homer finds one hot dog in the back of the freezer. And he's barbecuing this hot dog outside, and he drops it by accident, and he accidentally slices off his finger into the barbecue. Realizes his finger tastes delicious, and he starts to chop off more body parts. It gets increasingly more severe as the segment goes on, and he uses his dry scalp for seasoning, and it's disgusting. But I loved it, and I adored it. It was such a fun concept. I absolutely adored the execution of the narrative. Visually, it was stomach churning to see and to think about. But that's a feeling that I love when I'm watching horror, and Treehouse of Horror is the perfect place for it. Really adored it. For me, all three segments were brilliant. If I had to rank them, I'd go... Okay, so I'd go Coralisa as number one. In terms of the parody, I preferred The Exor-Sis, but in terms of the narrative and how it made me feel, I prefer Homer. So I think those two are having to be a tie. And the intro I loved as well. So relieved after a couple of questionable Treehouse of Horrors. I'm so thankful that Treehouse of Horror 28 is, all things considered, pretty perfect.